In this video, you're going to learn about some of the main problems with unclear pronoun reference and how to then solve those problems to make sure that your writing is as clear as it can be. To be effective writers, we have to be clear. If our readers can't understand what we're saying, then we're not doing our jobs. One of the most common problems with clarity occurs when pronouns have unclear antecedents. Antecedent is the word for the word or word group that a pronoun stands for. So, for example, in a sentence, Mary likes ice cream, so she bought some. The antecedent of the pronoun she is Mary. Pronouns must always clearly refer back to a specific antecedent. It's not enough for the reader to be able to kind of figure it out. It needs to be perfectly clear. And that's where you as a writer need to become familiar with the different kinds of problems you might encounter so that you can make sure you don't create these problems in your own writing. The first problem is ambiguous reference. This occurs when two or more words could logically and grammatically be the antecedent of a pronoun. This typically happens when you have two people of the same gender in the sentence and you're using the gendered pronoun. Sometimes the reader doesn't know which person you're specifically referring to. So here's an example. Lainey called Kira while she was at the grocery store. While you as a writer know who was at the grocery store, the reader doesn't necessarily know that. So this is an ambiguous reference problem because we don't know who was at the grocery store. Was it Lainey or was it Kira? So we have to completely rewrite this sentence. You could say Lainey called Kira while Lainey was at the grocery store, but that's a little bit awkward and repetitive. A better solution would be something like this. While Lainey was at the grocery store, she called Kira. Now we know who was at the grocery store. We know who was doing the calling. She refers back to Lainey because Kira isn't calling herself. Also, we haven't heard about Kira yet. So the only female before she that can logically be the antecedent of she is Lainey. The second problem is a general reference. This occurs when the writer uses a pronoun to refer to a general idea rather than to a specific antecedent. We need to be able to identify a word or clear word group that is the antecedent of a pronoun if we're doing it correctly. So here's an example. My camp group is going to Adventureland this week, which should be fun. Now, we as readers can infer that the idea is the trip to Adventureland is what's going to be fun. But for strong writing, the specific reference needs to be stated there. So one way to revise it so that you no longer have which with an unclear antecedent is to say, my camp group's trip to Adventureland this week should be fun. Now the subject of the sentence is trip, and that is the thing that should be fun. So there's not even a pronoun anymore to have an antecedent for. A third problem is weak reference. This occurs when the pronoun refers to an antecedent that is suggested by the context, but the word itself is not present in the sentence. So here's an example. Candace is a multi-sport athlete. The one that she likes best is soccer. Now we can infer that the word one is referring to the sport that she likes best because we know from the first sentence that she plays many sports. But for strong, clear writing, the word sport or sports has to be present in the writing. Otherwise, one does not have a clear antecedent. So we might revise it like this. Candace plays many sports. The one she likes best is soccer. If you really want to say Candace is a multi-sport athlete, there are other ways to revise it. You could say Candace, a multi-sport athlete, loves soccer the best. You could say, although she's a multi-sport athlete, Candace prefers soccer. You could say, of the many sports Candace plays, soccer is her favorite. So there's really a wide variety of possible ways to revise many of these sentences, but it's important to note that in order for your revised sentence to work, it either needs to not have a pronoun anymore, or the pronoun has to have a clear specific antecedent. Problem number 4 is indefinite reference. This is actually maybe the problem I see the most in student writing. At least it's the one that creates the most awkward sentences. This problem occurs when the writer uses a pronoun that not only lacks a specific logical antecedent, but that also is unnecessary to the meaning of a sentence. It's basically inserting extra pronouns where they just aren't needed. So this is something that I see quite a bit in my students' writing. On the website, it said that teenagers should get 8 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Okay, we could argue that, well, it refers to websites, so it has a clear antecedent, but it's not really logical because websites don't speak. Somebody has to create them, so it's better to have like the author's name or a reference to an author doing the saying. And regarding the pronoun, you just don't need one here. The website's author said that teenagers should get 8 to 9 hours of sleep each night. I very often see that construction on the website or in the book, it said. And you've got to stop writing it, coming up with new ways of just getting to it. The novel suggests, the website said, or the website's author said, the author said, getting rid of this kind of slow, cumbersome wind up to the main structure of the sentence. Now we're going to do some practice. There are 5 slides. On each slide, there's a sentence that has a pronoun reference problem. The first thing you need to do is identify the problem. Then you need to revise the sentence so that you solve the problem. Knowing that what I'm going to provide here are just suggested revisions, there's often more than one way to rewrite the sentence, although that does not mean that every possible revision you can think of is going to be a great version. So as we go through each sentence, you should pause the video to work on the sentence, restart it to hear me go through the answers, and then to get to the next sentence. Number 1, Alex asked Jack to vacuum his room. Okay, well, the pronoun is his. What's the problem? This would be an ambiguous reference problem. We don't know whose room is being referred to. While, yes, Alex could be a female, we don't have enough context here to really know. So we don't, regardless of the gender of the people in the sentence, we still don't know whose room is being referred to. We need to restructure the sentence. So one possibility is to just make it clearer and more specific. Jack's floor was dirty, so Alex suggested he vacuum it. This sentence is better on many levels. First of all, it takes care of the ambiguous pronoun reference, but just as importantly, I would say, is that it gives us more information. It tells us a causal relationship, right? That Jack's floor was dirty, and that's why Alex said that he should vacuum it. Number 2, in the last seconds of the game, Sarah shot it from across the court to secure the win. What's the problem, and how can you fix it? Problem here is weak reference. The antecedent ball is suggested by it. Like, we can visualize the sentence, we know it's a game, we see the word court, we understand that what she's shooting is a ball, but that word actually needs to be present in the sentence. So that's a pretty simple fix. We just rewrite the sentence with that reference in it. In the last seconds of the game, Sarah shot the ball from across the court to secure the win. In the poem, it describes the fish as having skin like wallpaper. The problem is indefinite reference. It is unnecessary to the sentence and does not have a logical antecedent. So what we want to do is figure out who or what is actually doing the describing and just get right to it. Bishop, which I knew was the writer of the poem, so I put that specific writer's name in, although you could just say the writer. So either one would work. The writer describes the fish as having skin like wallpaper. It's clear, it's more concise. We don't have an it to worry about what it refers to. And it's more logical because the poem isn't really describing the fish. Somebody created the poem, and it's that person who is doing the describing. Number 4, the temperature will rise over the next few days. That means the snow will melt. The problem here is general reference. That refers to an idea. It's basically referring to the whole first sentence, the fact that the temperatures will be rising over the next few days, but we need a specific word or small word group, like a phrase, that is being referred to by the pronoun. So here's a possible revision. It also achieves conciseness. The rising temperatures mean the snow will melt. If it's important to keep in the concept of the next few days, you could say the rising temperatures over the next few days mean the snow will melt. But this way, it's very clear what that refers to. In fact, we don't have that anymore. We just have a clear subject and consequence. So I would say that the fact that it's more concise is actually probably even more of a win here than even just solving the pronoun problem. Finally, this is one of the most common problems I see in student writing. During Shakespeare's time, you would not be allowed to perform in plays if you were a woman. So my students often ask me, am I allowed to use you in my essay? And depending on the type of essay, I say, maybe, it depends. It depends on what type of essay it is. It depends on how you're using you. If you're actually using you to mean me, and you're writing some kind of argument, then it could work. But that's not what's happening in this case. This is a clear and definite reference problem. The writer said you, but you isn't talking about me. I wasn't alive during Shakespeare's time. So it's really not about me. They just use this to be able to convey the information. There's no specific antecedent for it. I am not like the audience of the you in this case. So we really just need to rework this to get rid of the you altogether, and it's going to lead to a stronger, clearer sentence. So here's a suggestion. During Shakespeare's time, women were not allowed to perform in plays. Done. It's clear, it's concise. If in the previous, the first version of the sentence, the you is an attempt to engage the reader, while that's certainly a worthy thing to do, you want to think about how you're doing it. Just using the word you doesn't necessarily engage the reader. In fact, in this sentence, it makes me think, well, it confuses me because you're not talking about me. I wasn't alive during that time. So avoid using you for the most part, unless the you is really referring to the person that is reading your essay.